we had made an adjustment in their press, and we went on like a 15-0 run. And then they gave MJ some, ticky-tack All-American call, and, I lost it. And then I don't think I got a tech on that play, but I might have, and that play kind of changed the game because I kind of lost my composure with the young kids, and they started playing how my body language was, and then that was a big learning point for me as a coach.
Hey, I'm Corey Baldwin.
And I'm Dan Searle, and we're back on Off the Beaten Path, a podcast for basketball coaches living in obscurity, working in obscurity, even those who have made it out of obscurity.
Hey, we're a place for storytelling, a place for connecting and reconnecting, a place for food for thought, and our favorite food for the belly. And we got a special one here today. We're going to have Andy Harre, as we like to call him, ATrain, those who know him well, from Savannah State. And that's where he's at now, but he's been a little bit of everywhere. And he's going to talk to us some about those journeys and some of the journeys that involve the Gibbons family, Coach Gibbons, Gordon Gibbons, and Jay Gibbons. And then he's also going to tell us men, women's basketball, D1, D2, high school, JUCO. He is a true off the beaten path guy. So we're ready to hear from him.
And we love it. So Coach Andy Harre, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about where you are now, what's going on with your life, and a little bit of your backstory.
Well, thank you guys for having me today. Currently, I'm here at Savannah State University with women's basketball. This will be my 5th year here with Cedric Baker. He is the all-time winningest coach here, at Savannah State. Started my career as a high school player at O'Galley, Florida, O'Galley High School in O'Galley, Florida. Moved on to the college ranks to play for Gordon Gibbons, at Florida Southern College. And then, started out as a high school assistant under Ed Kirshner at Oviedo High School, all-time winningest high school coach in Florida. Moved on to Seminole State Community College. From there, I got the job at Clayton State University. Actually took Corey's seat once he became the head coach at Truett McConnell. And then from Clayton State, moved on to Grambling State University. And then done 2 stints here at Savannah State. From Grambling State, I went to Savannah State on the men's side, then took the head job at Griffin High School. And now I'm back at Savannah State on the women's side. So a lot of moving around in college athletics if you want to be a coach.
And you went to Florida Southern. Tell us a little bit about that as a player and kind of some things you learned and that you still use today or whatever.
Man, it's, I use a lot of the same coaching philosophies and schemes. I think defensively, coach was ahead of the ball game. We like you said, we played at a high level. I was not a star player on those teams. I was like the 13th man out of 15 players. So I got mop-up duty here and there. But the culture, it taught me how to be a winner. And, kind of just moving on early on, that shapes your coaching, schemes, philosophies. And, I still hold a lot of those things that I learned, 20 years ago, still doing those same things.
Now, when you went on to coach high school out of there, was your thoughts you would be a high school coach the rest of your go, or was your thoughts, hey, eventually I'm going to try to get into college?
Well, my dream was to always be a college coach.
Okay.
Growing up in Florida, obviously it's a football state. I was a diehard, Tar Heel fan, Gator fan growing up. And then going to those camps, I didn't play basketball until the 9th grade. That was the first time I ever picked up a basketball and played. And going to those Florida Southern camps, man, really exposed me to a different level. And then, playing at Florida Southern, that's kind of what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to have a lifestyle like Coach Gibbons.
Don't we all, right? Especially.
Yeah, it's a pretty good lifestyle.
Now that's good. So you end up getting your first gig in JUCO. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. So, graduate college. While I'm in college, my last 2 years finishing up, I'm an assistant at Oviedo High School under Ed Kirshner, all-time winningest high school coach in Florida. Learned a lot from Coach Kirshner. And it was there in Orlando. And then I parlayed into the Seminole Community College job, which is no longer open. But, did a year there in the junior college ranks, Florida Junior College, Georgia Junior College, some of the best in the country. So it helped me because, once you took that job at Truett, I had established a relationship with a lot of the coaches down there, and I was able to recruit some of those kids in those Florida Jukes.
Corey, which ones are better? Is it Georgia Juke? Is it Florida Juke? Come on.
Hey, you got to stay away from that battle. You'll get in trouble down in Florida. The Florida Mafia will come find you. Hey, Seminole, man. Seminole's kind of like Georgia Perimeter. I mean, it's a major town, and it's crazy that it no longer has JUCO hoops right there in Orlando. Crazy, right?
Yeah, you got Valencia and Seminole right there in the heart of Orlando, and no junior college hoops. It's very surprising, especially with Orlando hoops being so big. Both of those schools probably have 15,000 students, at the schools.
It's crazy.
Daytona, they've been good for a long time.
So then you end up going to follow my act. So that I set the table where it was easy for you. Anything you did had to be good. Anything you did had to be good, right? So you fall into Clayton State. So now you're in the Clayco family. I don't know if that's good or bad, but you were there 5 years, and your first year there was probably the best team that ever assembled, correct? I mean, y'all went real deep, correct?
Yeah, it was a good team, man. A lot of leadership, a lot of seniority, some vets. We were ranked number 2 in the country for 9 weeks that year. I remember Winona State. We kept checking to see if we might get that number 1 spot. They won a couple games in overtime, one at the buzzer. So we never got to that number 1 ranking like we did at Florida Southern. But 9 weeks at number 2, NCAA tournament, round of 32. And that was Heartbreak Hotel that year, CB. Probably one of the better recruits you ever brought into Clayton State, Todd McLaurin. Broke his foot on the first play of the second half in the second round of the NCAA tournament on a hop step. And then that next game in the Sweet 16, we lose to Virginia Union at the buzzer. 1.7 seconds, side OB. They threw a lucky, inbound pass. Kid pivoted and banked it off the glass at the buzzer to win by 1. So yeah, that team was good, man. That was around the 32, and then that following year, we ended up going to the Sweet 16 and losing to Augusta State, who had the pro Garrett Seiler, who played in the NBA for 5 years.
Hey, let's put that in perspective with both of you guys. Little Clayton State, number 2 in the country for 9 weeks, advancing to the second, third rounds of NCAA tournament. How does that happen, and how big of a deal is that for the Lakers?
Unreal, because when I played there, we had one side bleachers, and we had just went Division II, and it was just. Coaches all shared one office the whole time I was there as a player and a coach. The biggest thing at Clayton was usually the team camp, not so much the actual team at Clayton State. And even though we had a lot of teams that were slowly building up towards that, those 2 years were as good. And maybe the last year I was there, maybe you could throw all 3 of those together. As good as it gets, other than winning a title, or going to the Final Four. And to do it there, unbelievable. Most people don't even know that school exists off Highway 54.
Right.
CB, I think the year KY was the point guard for you. And you guys lose to Kennesaw State like 33-30, I think the score was. And then, Kennesaw goes on and wins the national championship, and they blow everybody out. I think that might have been their last year Division II. But the talent level at that institution for probably 10 years was unbelievable. Would you not say?
Oh yeah, had a lot of guys play overseas, and benefit from it, and a lot of guys get into coaching, including the assistants like you and myself.
Yeah, a lot of people staying in coaching. And speaking of that, one thing we talk about on the podcast over the episodes is those relationships. So, Andy, you end up at Clayton State. How and why was that move after Seminole and Oviedo High School? You come up there. It goes back to those connections from team camp in Florida Southern, right? But tie that together for us.
Yeah, that it does. Basketball is a relationship business. Playing for Coach G in college, Jay being my best friend, my brother. We've grown up together, man, and I know the system. I think that helped. Corey took the head job at Truett, and I don't think there was anybody out there that probably knew the system better, and that could come in and teach it, because I know Corey kind of took the job late. Was it maybe July or August when you took that job, TB?
Last weekend in July. Both head jobs I've gotten. I've been hired the last weekend in July.
Yeah, so having those connections, really help, and then just knowing a system, being able to trust a guy can teach, what your vision is as a head coach, So I mean, Corey had success at Clayton State. He's had success at that junior college level now, and I think that's a big reason why, man. It's all about hard work,
All right, so now you end up leaving Clayco. I know that was a hard move for you because it had become home and being there with Coach G and all. And now you go to Division I, and little did we know you were going to be a HBCU Division I guy multiple times after this. But you go to Grambling. Tell us a little bit about Grambling and even a little bit about Savannah State when you were on the men's side, and then we'll transition over to being a head high school coach and girls assistant as well.
Yeah, it was hard to leave Clayton State, man. The community, real good community, makes you feel like it's part of home away from home. And then CB, the last recruit we ever signed was Deandre Williams. The year before, he started 17 games at Oregon. We won 22 games that year before, so we had a chance to be really good. But I also wanted to experience the Division I, rigor and grind. So moving from Atlanta to Ruston is a bit of a difference. Talk about off the beaten path. Grambling's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana. Same town as Louisiana Tech. They're about 3 miles apart. Was only there for 1 year. Head coach was Bobby Washington. Worked with Tay Norwood. He's actually at Humboldt State now as the head coach. And that was interesting. We had to play 10 guarantee games to start the year before conference. So, you're 0-10 going into conference. And that's, I'll talk about that at Savannah State, but being able to manage a team, when you're playing that high major schedule early on, that's something I learned at an early age, But, we won some games that year. One of my favorite players ever was Quincy Roberts. He was a St. John's transfer that we had got down there, and he was a player of the year in the SWAC. He averaged about 26 a game. He was a real deal, man. He was a McDonald's All-American out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Did that year there, and then, got a knock at the door on a Friday morning from Bobby at 6:30 a.m. I'll never forget, saying, I think I might be getting fired today. And, go into the office that day, and sure enough, time to relocate zip codes. Made the move back to Savannah State. Once again, Searle, it's all about relationships. I knew Broadnax, I knew Jay, I knew Clyde, Wormley, who's still the assistant at Savannah State, and they had a position open. And I was able to, work out there for a couple of years, and we were really good, man. Worked with Jay for 2 years, and they had some really, really good teams down there at Savannah State, postseason tournaments, won the MEAC, things like that. So, those top teams in those HBCU leagues, you're one of those top 5 teams, you're pretty darn good. I mean, you see the teams from the MEAC, whether it's A&T or Hampton, they give teams problems in the NCAA tournament sometimes. So,
one of the things that doesn't get said enough, and off the beaten path, we can say it, is in the SWAC and MEAC, they play all those guarantee games. The fact that they even have a team after that, more or less compete and win and play and go on and win games, to me is unbelievable. I don't think those guys get enough credit for doing that. I mean, That's tough, man. That's tough. But anybody starting out 0-10, 0-13 before they play just to raise money for the school, that's tough.
Tell us about that. You mentioned how you learned about managing a team that's going to be 0-10 and keeping people engaged. Coach,
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, people see the games on ESPN and you're playing in these, beautiful gymnasiums, but what they don't see is, the work behind the scenes and the travel, waking up at 3 a.m. to catch a 5 a.m. flight to fly out to the West Coast, and you got to practice that day and check into the hotel and watch film that night and wake up the next morning and do shoot around and go back to the hotel and then play the game and then catch another flight to maybe go to Oklahoma. But the smaller schools, man, they rely on that. That's a lifeline. 500-600 grand bringing in. That goes a long way in some of these athletic departments. And that was the really, and CB may agree or disagree, I'm not sure, but early on, guys like Gordon Gibbons and Ed Kirshner are guys that really shaped me as a basketball coach. And as I've gotten older and other people that I've worked for, I've learned stuff from. And Horace Broadnax really helped me shape that mold of managing a team, basically playing a high major schedule in the non-conference. And, it's continuing to stay on them. Demand, high expectations, hold them accountable, and you can't let things slide, because if you can execute things against those teams and some of those, first round NBA players, once you get back to your league, granted you have good players, but, things might be a little bit easier,
That's a great point right there. You got to keep those expectations high. You can't let stuff slide, or when you come to conference, it's going to be a mess. And hey, it's nice that more and more there is some more recognition of your Gramblings, of your NC Centrals, of your Savannah State. You got some coverage there with ESPN following along and riding the bus, but people don't know enough about how hard that grind is. So appreciate that insight. And
I'll give an extra pub. ESPNU does a game Monday night during the season, SWAC and MEAC back to back, and I've always watched it because I've had guys play in those leagues. It's good basketball. So, I mean,
yeah, it's awesome, man. The crowds are electric. There's good energy, in the gymnasiums. Broadnax at Savannah State, they've beaten a couple Power 5 teams. My boss, he's beaten Florida at Savannah State. So, you get those wins, it's good. So,
Right. But it is a grind. And part of getting through that grind is you got to coach and work with one of your best friends ever at Savannah State. What was that like with you and Jay together on both sidelines and streets of Savannah?
Man, it's been awesome. Jay's a guy that I've really looked up to. Super high basketball IQ guy, super high IQ basketball coach. And he really taught me the game at Florida Southern, to be honest with you. Playing in high school, I played on the wing, played at the 4 position. And then at Florida Southern, they threw me in at the point guard position. And Jay really taught me a lot. And, that grew my love for the game. And then just being able to work with him was really awesome, seeing how he works.
Did you ever go to the coach's corner in Savannah? That's the real question.
All the time. I think he had a bed in the back. I think he had a room in the back. So, but no, just, learning from Jay, man, has really been awesome. And it shaped my love for the game of basketball. My first job was working for my college coach. And then I got a chance to, also work with his son, who was my best friend. So, it's an interesting dynamic.
Give us an example of Jay. Why is he so good? You say that insight that he has and the ability to develop players. What are a couple of Jay examples, stories, moments that you learned from, that you enjoyed, that you could share?
Well, as a basketball player, and he's able to teach us too, he always saw 2 plays ahead. So, he's able to talk to players. I'm talking about him from a coaching perspective right now. He's able to show players what they don't see and what they can be on the basketball court. And then, he's very knowledgeable of the game. The kids realize that, he puts them through stuff that they probably haven't been put through yet. And then he builds them up, as well. So, I think that, being demanding and holding them accountable and then building them back up is definitely a strength of his. And also being able to show them how to play the game the right way.
Good stuff. All right, so now take us. You go back the south side of Atlanta to Griffin High School, a legendary high school, won multiple state championships, and you're named the head coach there. Man, that had to be kind of interesting coming from college now back to high school.
Yeah, it was, seeing Griffin at team camp and recruiting their players, I knew that job, obviously you just said it's one of the best jobs in the state. And I was actually eating breakfast at the MEAC tournament when I got that phone call. But, being able to go down there and work with those kids and, help mentor them and get them into college and do some things, man, it was a really, really awesome time frame. But and like you say, Cyril, it goes back to relationships. The principal at Griffin at that time, he was a student at Kissimmee Osceola when Coach Kirshner was the head coach there and had like the best team in the country at Osceola High School in the early 80s. So, but that community, man, it's big time athletics. I don't know, have you coached any of those kids from Griffin, CB? I mean, I know you recruited them, Jay Brown, Darren Hancock. Did you play against Hancock?
He used to play pickup a lot at Clayton during the summers. He was older than me, but he would come back when he was playing overseas, and even some when he was with the Hawks. He was real good friends with Derek Stroud, who was my roommate my junior year, and they would hang out.
I'm 1-0 against Big Stroud, by the way.
Nice. I like it.
I was the first Caucasian basketball coach at Griffin High School, the first head white coach at Griffin High School ever.
It seems like part of your past. Yeah. We can talk about that angle too. And Corey loves the 6 degrees of separation. At Griffin High School, I did coach Brent Petway at the AAU level with the Georgia Stars for a couple of years.
That's right. Yeah, you had Petway,
Georgia.
You had Jay Brown, you had Sydney during those time frames.
Yep.
I know we're probably missing on a couple. The Corbin kid, Charles Corbin, that I think he went to Winthrop and had like an unbelievable career, 4-year career there. So.
How'd that transition go for you on two fronts?
Always that player.
Yeah. And you had him there, but you went from college to high school and from assistant to head coach. Talk about that transition, both in your brain, in the day-to-day, and what people thought of you.
Man, it's awesome. I remember, CB, you probably remember that first day, you're a head coach, man. It's an awesome feeling that you're not the assistant coach anymore and you're running your own program. And here I am at Griffin High School, one of the top programs in the state, but they hadn't been good since Petway and them guys left. It had been 10 years, I think, since they had been to a state championship. My first year, we won 22 games, I think, and went to the state tournament. So it was cool, man. But then going back to being an assistant, you gotta put your ego aside because as an assistant, it's your job to promote what the head coach's vision is for that program. And that's the job of an assistant coach, if you ask me.
So what was your personality and style like as a head coach? Are you a stomper and a table pounder, Coach Gibbons, or are you the quiet guy on the bench just talking to the guy next to you? What was your head coaching style?
I think it's the feel of the game. I could be a pretty fiery guy, but I also know, especially coaching the young kids in high school, they're going to make a lot of mistakes, man. So you got to back off of them sometimes. When they make mistakes and more talk to them and asking them, what they're seeing on the court. So you can get in their head and get them to where you want them to be,
I hear you. That's good insight there, especially with the younger high school crowd. You can't – those mistakes are going to happen. And if you're going to lose your mind on every one of them, it's not good for anybody. You're right. And how about –
the kids today, Cyril, they're constantly on social media. Everybody nitpicks their game. So to hear positive, reinforcement is good. And my boss, Cedric Baker, says it all the time, and it's so true. 75% of what you hear out of people's mouths in athletics is negative. So let's try to stay on that positive side, but at the same time, hold those kids accountable, and move on.
Hey,
and I think that's where I've really matured is being more of a positive guy as I've gotten older,
Mm-hmm. This is what's so great about this podcast, Corey, is some of the insight we get from people off the beaten path. That's a really good way to look at it. The 75% negative, that's going to beat the kids down. Plus, it's 100% negative on their Snapchats and Instagrams and web pages that they're following along. So we'll remember that. That's a good one.
Great. All right, ATrain. So now you move in. While we're on the Philly touchy side, you move into the female side of coaching. So tell us how in the world,
Corey,
not
a good transition, Corey.
Not a good transition. Come on, man. Philly touchy. All right, you can change that one.
Yeah, I went from D1 men to high school varsity girls, and it was a tough change in mindset for me. But the competitiveness is about the same. It doesn't matter if it's a D1 guy or a high school girl.
No, I know. All right, so tell us, how was it making? I'll rephrase. We'll cut that out. So now we talk a little bit about some of the psychological side of coaching, and then you end up making another change where I'm sure you had to change again with all the dealings you deal with different people. So now you're on the women's side of coaching. And you not only make a women's change, you make a change Division I for a while, and now the same place goes D2. So walk us through all that, because that's crazy stuff to me.
Man, it's it's been an interesting road, man. Get here. I knew Coach Baker from my time, previously at Savannah State, and he had an opening. I always wanted to be a head coach, and I got that head coaching experience, but I also wanted to get back to college. Them high school days, boy, it's 6 a.m. and at 10 p.m., gets around quick. Wanted to get back into college, man. And Coach Baker had an opening and asked if I'd be interested in coaching with him on the women's side. And I said, sure. I think you got to pivot, in life. And I took this opportunity. And boy, you talk about a whirlwind. My first year here, we have a good team. We finished, I think we finished third in the MEAC. But it goes back to that non-conference schedule again, and managing the schedule. We play Washington, who had Kelsey Plum, who was like the 4th pick in the WNBA draft a couple years ago. She's starting point guard for Las Vegas. And then we played South Carolina back-to-back in a 48-hour span. And all 5 of their starters were in the top 10 of the WNBA draft. Mm-hmm. The grind going out to Washington, flying back to Savannah, because we actually played Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks at our home gym in Tiger Arena. Wow. The year they won the national championship. They came down here, and we played them well. We held them to 70 points. We didn't score a lot, but, I knew we were going to be pretty good defensively. I think they beat us 70-40 that game. And we were good in the league. The injury factor has hurt us here at Savannah State. And I think I see it a little bit more on the women's side than I did on the men's side is the injury. So that was my first year here. We end up, third in the league, and then we lose 10 seniors. So we decide that we're going to go all freshmen. And you can see now that I do have some gray hair on the beard. But, we thought we were going to be able to keep those freshmen through the transition. We were the youngest team in the country, Division I that year and the following year. A lot of kids transferred to other Division I schools. And then, here we are last year now in the SIAC. Had a good run last year. We only finished with 7 players on the team at the end of the year due to injuries. It's been a good experience,
Man, so you were a D2 men's coach at one time, and then you flash ahead a decade later, and you're a D2 women's assistant, or you were a D2 assistant at the time, and now you're D2 women's assistant. What changed, in your opinion, in D2, when seeing it continue? Or if anything, did anything change to you? Or?
Well, while I was at Clayton State, we had Dennis Cox, who was the head women's coach. And he was the second winningest coach in the country, regardless of division during that time frame, outside of Gino Oriama. So, he won a national championship at Clayton State. So I saw a high level of Division II ball. And I think that's where we're at here at Savannah State is, I think we're going to put ourselves in a position where we compete for a national championship, on a yearly basis. Because, we're going to be real good, God willing, if we can play, this year.
And what's that looking like right now? Today, when we're taping this, is kind of the opening of Division I hoops across the nation. What's it looking like for you guys with new protocols and masks and testing and all the rest?
Well, it's definitely an adaptation. The way you just sit on the bench on the sidelines, it is different now. But, we're scheduled to open up at Benedict on January 9th. Benedict, top 10 team in the country last year. They're 5 as a first team All-American. We had them on the ropes last year at their place. Took a couple ill-advised shots, and they got some runouts, and that was kind of the difference in the game. So, I'm looking forward to seeing them, so we can see where we're going to be at this year. But yeah, we're supposed to open up on the 9th of January. We have an 11-game season right now, and then we also have the conference tournament and the NCAA tournament as well.
How is it for you? I know one of the hard things in JUCO is we're having the whole fall, and then you play in the spring semester. How hard is it keeping motivation and practice going without any throwing treats out there for games? I mean, usually in basketball, we're such a game-oriented sport. Unlike football, you play a lot more games than you practice normally, whereas now it's not that way. How's that been with the motivation and just dealing with the girls? Has that been tough?
Actually, it's been awesome, man. And that's why I think we're going to be pretty good this year, man. The girls have, they've been to the weight room 6 a.m. It's individual workouts. It's, 3-hour practices. And their attitudes have been awesome. Their work ethics, have been awesome. So, I'm really excited about this team this year.
That is tough, not having the carrot of the games coming up, right, Corey? How about you guys? How do you keep people motivated? It sounds like, Andy, your crew they're getting after it and they're enjoying time together and working hard. Corey, how about you guys?
We hit the wall at about practice 30. I keep up with our workouts. And when we were at workout 30 without a game, it took us until we got to about workout 40. And then we knew we had a game. We had a scrimmage coming up, and they got excited again. So we had about a 10 workout that was like pulling teeth, which was unfortunate. I love practice. It's my favorite time, but it's not always the player's favorite time. So it was hard for me to relate a little bit, but I had to try kind of step back and see it because they definitely hit the wall. They were ready for some games.
Did you guys mix up your practices? Do you do a lot more intra-squad or 3-on-3 stuff in practices to make it more game-like?
I did those 10 days. We changed it around a lot because I saw it. So we went a lot of live stuff, a lot of games to 3 baskets, game, whatever, and working on stuff within live.
You're the godfather of Georgia junior college basketball now. Can I say that? Are you the longest tenured coach?
I'm the oldest. I've been in it the longest. Yeah.
Speaking of godfathers of basketball, Glenn Wilkes passed away this week down in Florida. I mean, that guy did more for basketball in Florida, man. Him, Jim Haley, Shaky Rodriguez passed away a couple weeks ago. He was huge. And then Coach G, man, and Coach Kirster. I mean, those guys, man, they really put basketball on the map, in the state of Florida, man. Those 5 or 6 guys.
When we had Coach G on, he told some Glenn Wilkes stories.
In the urinal. In the urinal.
We got
in the urinal. I saw that one, yeah.
In the urinal with Bruce Pearl. We got Gordon Gibbons and Glenn Wilkes. But
Not sure what that has to do with off the beaten path, but
well, for Gibbons, that was a moment, right? When Glenn Wilkes didn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
Wait a sec.
Oh man!
All right, Searle, you ready for a little lightning round here with ATrain?
Let's do it.
All right, ATrain. We're gonna ask you about 4 or 5 questions, maybe 3 or 4 apiece, I guess, and quick answer unless there's a great story or some name dropping that you're going to do. We'll allow that always. But I'll start us off. I'm a foodie, so give me your best place to eat in Savannah. Your favorite place that you ate while you were there.
Got to be Vic's on the River.
Okay, I like it. I like it.
What do you get there?
It depends on what's on the menu. I usually get, a nice sirloin, or the short ribs are awesome there.
I love it. I love it. All right. When you were in Grambling, supposedly Louisiana has some good barbecue down there as well. Give us your best barbecue joint down there. Did you happen to hit one?
Oh man, they had this place on campus called Cass Street. Man, that thing was it was nothing but fried food and 20 pounds on you, man, but that stuff was so good.
All right, my last foodie spot. Your favorite place when you were at Griffin?
Ooh, probably Wing It. Downtown, they have a wing spot down there called Wing It, which was pretty good.
I like it. I like it. I like it. All right, and then my last one, and I'll give it to Searle. I always ask this. You've been into some obscure spots, and we've heard some good obscure gyms. Give me your favorite gym for it being a little shaky, and your favorite gym for having a great crowd. So really a 2-question there.
Oh my God, my first ever game, AAU game, we go down to Pahokee. I'm like 13 years old, and it's a nighttime game. And I forget, we're playing some AAU team out of Jacksonville, man, and that was interesting, to say the least.
All right, Searle, your turn. Take over.
All right. Yeah, you've referenced your progress and your process as a coach. You're a veteran now. What is a piece of advice that you give to a young coach?
Patience, man. It's not going to happen for you overnight. I always thought by now I'd be a head coach somewhere, and that has not happened, but you still got to keep working at it. And your time will come, and it's always about fit.
Mm-hmm. Always about fit. That's a good one. You mentioned BB Waldon as you were going up against those big lineups. Is he the best player that you've ever played against as a player yourself? And then who's some of the best players that you've coached against?
BB's right there, man. There's a kid by the name of Ladarius Halton that played at New Smyrna Beach High School. He came right after Vince Carter. I didn't play against Vince. I was a lot younger than him. But I saw him play, and that's when I knew I probably should get into coaching, when I saw Vince Carter play. But Ladarius, man, that dude, he was 6'6", he was smooth, he was about 40 a night. Dropped 70 a couple years. He had the Vincent Banks type high school career, just unbelievable. But he got derailed by a degenerative knee issue, and he was actually the first player Billy Donovan ever signed at Florida. I think it was him. Played against Udonis. I remember him, dunking on me pretty good. I think that was the first time I ever got dunked on was by Udonis Haslam. But BB, man, BB was special.
All right. So back to the sidelines. What is the craziest thing you've done as a coach, either in practice, in a game? What's one of those moments that you've either lost your mind or made a great read and adjusted a defense? What's one of those craziest things?
I would say about choking myself out with the tie on a bad call, and I couldn't get it loosened back up, and it was, constricting the airways. And it was, I think it was against Dan Mallman against Jonesboro when he had MJ Walker and that whole crew. We had made an adjustment in their press, and we went on like a 15-0 run. And then they gave MJ some, ticky-tack All-American call, and I lost it. And then I don't think I got a tech on that play. But I might have, and that play kind of changed the game, because I kind of lost my composure with the young kids, and they started playing how my body language was, and then that was a big learning point for me as a coach.
How about that? They do. They feed off of that. All right. So from the craziest to my last question here, best moment as a coach, from the women's game to your time at Savannah State or Grambling or high school. What's that best moment that sticks in your mind?
Best moment, being able to coach with Jay Gibbons, being able to coach with, his father, my high school, my college coach, Gordon Gibbons. and coaching with my high school coach, Coach Buchanan. Those are some awesome moments.
We haven't talked enough or at all until you mentioned him right now. Talk about Coach Buchanan. Talk about Brent for Coach B for a little bit there, and then how he ties into this whole storyline with the Gibbons, with you, with Corey, Clayton, all the rest.
Coach Buchanan actually got me to play basketball. I never played. I was an Army brat growing up. I think I went to 6 schools in 7 years, just because we were moving around all the time. And I was actually a really good baseball and football player. And it was Little League All-Stars. I think I was 13 or 14, about to go into high school. And he was out there at the games and asked me if I'd be interested in going with the high school team to team camp at Florida Southern. And, I went to camp with him, and that's where I fell in love with the game of basketball. I never picked up a baseball bat or another football ever again, man. The game is just an awesome game. The relationships you form, the bonds, they're everlasting.
How about that? And here you are telling those stories, these bonds that keep going. But that's great to hear that Coach B was the one that got you hooked on hoops. I love it.
Yeah, man. Actually, him and CB worked together for about 4 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
In the small little office.
Coach. Yeah, we shared. We sat right next to each other, elbow to elbow.
Corey,
I don't think, man, like you said, Searle, what those guys did at Clayton State to get that program going, man. If you're not an insider, you don't know, man, what that situation was like. And to be on a national stage, man, that's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. Big time. I agree. And that's, hopefully we can get some of those stories out there and that exposure so that people can appreciate the work that gets done and the level of hoops that's played at places like Clayton State and your stories from Grambling and Savannah State. Love it.
Awesome. All right. Well, close us out, ATrain. We always let our guests have a last word. Is there anything you want to say or anybody you want to recognize or anything before we get out of here?
Man, I just want to say thank you to both of you guys, man, for having me on your show. I've watched about 7 or 8 episodes. So I'm an active listener, man, and to be part of something good and positive, man, is really awesome. So I really appreciate you guys, having me on today.
Active listeners,
awesome,
we like
awesome.
you.
We love that.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And
get the pub out.
Yeah, for those active listeners out there, make sure that you're following along on Instagram and Twitter. Also, you can see the little handles there: Off Beaten Path Podcast on Instagram and Off Beaten Path _ there for the Twitter. So interact with us there, follow along, and hopefully we'll have some more great guests, just like Coach Andy Harre, that'll be joining us soon.
Hopefully I can be back here sometime soon when we're having this successful season this year.
Exactly. You'll have to circle back through. We just had our first repeat guest who joined us with Ty Anderson, who coached the #1 draft pick, Anthony Edwards. It was good to have him back. And
former Swamp Fox.
Mm-hmm. Yes, way
right.
off all the way.
Right. Well, let's close it out here, Searle. We're a show for those who want to coach, those who used to coach, those who are coaches, those who follow coaches, those who hire and fire coaches, and especially those who watch our show.